Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Uranowski, and I'm with Energy Cap. Today, I head up all things product marketing for Energy Cap. And we're having a discussion today about benchmarking and the benefits of benchmarking, especially for higher education institutions and campuses. And we have an absolutely all-star cast with us today to have this discussion. Brendan Hall, who's with the EPA, and Zach, who is coming directly from higher education with Western Michigan University, and of course Melanie Stewart, who's with Optimized Systems, who has many educational clients. So we're going to have a great chat today with all of these folks, and we're going to start with Brendan with the EPA, and we're going to talk all things Energy Star and Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And from there, we're gonna dig deep into some successes that other higher education institutes have had with benchmarking and kind of what that has meant for them, and the decisions that they've made as a result of having that information. So that's the plan today. And Brendan, you and I are going to start, and we're gonna chat all things EPA. And just tell me a little bit about you and about your role at the EPA and what that looks like.
Sure thing. Glad to be here, Sarah. So as mentioned, my name is Brendan Hall. I'm actually originally from Michigan, so connection with the other panelists, Zach. But I've been with the EPA and in DC since 2016, the entire time working with the Energy Star program at EPA. And our specific part of the program focuses on improving the energy performance of existing buildings towards energy and cost savings, and therefore or thereby greenhouse gas emissions reduction and climate protection. So my specific role with the program is, along with one colleague, supporting state and local governments on their programs and policies focused on improving buildings in their jurisdiction. So that's like benchmarking requirements, building performance standard laws, voluntary initiatives. And then personally, I lead our outreach to the higher education sector, focused on improving the performance of their buildings on campus. Our higher ed program is really focused on increasing the use of Energy Star Portfolio Manager, our sort of flagstone or keystone tool, as well as using other sort of program resources and support, ultimately towards improving the energy management of those buildings. And before EPA, I worked briefly for the city of Ann Arbor, and that's actually where I started, where I learned about benchmarking. I was benchmarking city-owned facilities and portfolio manager.
Thanks. And you said something important there, which was there are mandates and laws and rules for a lot of areas that talk about benchmarking and building benchmarking. And Energy Star Portfolio Manager is really the flagship tool to do that, right? For a lot of great reasons. It's free. It's easy to use. It's well established, and it's widely used. So can you talk to me a little bit more about kind of Energy Star Portfolio Manager and how folks use it, and I know we can talk more about some cool things that you've done both in the past and upcoming specifically for higher ed, but just chat through the Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So you mentioned a lot of the reasons why there are over 50 jurisdictions that sort of require the use of portfolio manager for reporting under benchmarking laws, which usually involve reporting of energy use, sometimes water use, and then public disclosure for larger commercial and multifamily buildings. And then building performance standard requirements, which is the newer kid on the block. And those are sort of caps on energy use or emissions performance, sometimes with sort of significant enforcement for buildings that fail to comply. So that's a more, stringent, I guess, policy trying to um, drive reductions, but they're ultimately aimed at the same goal. So portfolio manager is sort of the industry standard free tool from EPA for tracking energy use, water use, and waste of materials. We didn't start off sort of with this close connection with policy requirements. We're a voluntary part of the EPA that exists to, as I said, sort of support improvement and recognize leaders. Um, and one of the ways we do that is through Energy Star certification for top performers. So if you score a 75 or higher using the 1 to 100 Energy Star score, which is available for many types of buildings, you're eligible to apply for certification through Portfolio Manager. But the tool offers many different metrics related to energy use, water use, emissions um, for anyone to use. So the score isn't sort of end all be all. And I think last year we had over 300,000 buildings benchmarked in the tool. And there's a lot of reasons why people benchmark voluntarily, sort of not in connection with those policies, be it for internal reporting, emissions reporting requirements, or for investors or whatnot. So there's a lot of different sort of reasons, and just for the sake of improvement efforts as well. So
Yeah, to make internal decisions and yeah, to do all those good things. So I know the EPA has done some cool things in the past, specifically for campuses, which we know campuses are they tend to have large footprints, right? They're diverse in their needs. And the EPA has done some really cool things to understand sort of as a scope, as a unit, where they stand with things like the HEBI program. So do you want to chat? We're going to talk a lot more about what's upcoming, but maybe talk a little bit about some things you have done as well, like the HEBI program.
sure. Yeah. So the HEBI was, just to de-acronym it, was the Higher Education Benchmarking Initiative. And that was sort of the main thing I think we've done so far for the sector. So I mentioned the scores, Energy Star scores that are available for many property types. Unfortunately, for higher education, we don't offer scores sort of at a campus level or typically for as many buildings found on campus. So it's not exclusively that there aren't any sort of eligible buildings, but for the most part, you'd have to sort of look at other performance metrics in the tool to find value. So anyway, this was our effort to try and sort of add more value for benchmarking and drive more benchmarking activity. And it involved campus level reporting of energy use and water use. And then we provided back scorecards, individualized scorecards to all the participating campuses showing their performance compared to peers based on things we heard are sort of drivers for or differentiators for campuses such as Carnegie classification, climate zone, percent residential, and the percentage of campus sort of defined as energy intensive. So that was our sort of biggest effort. We held 2 rounds of the HEBI in 2000 and 2022, and we saw over 200 participating campuses from over 100 institutions. The other sort of big thing we've done recently, separate from the HEBI, is a 3-part virtual workshop series about building performance standards, that sort of significant new building focused climate policy specifically for the sector. So we held that last year and are starting to sort of promote the takeaways from that session where we sort of introduced the topic, and then we did a lot of polling and engagement around what sector preferences are for the design and implementation of those policies, and then talked about sort of compliance and improvement strategies. So, yeah.
Okay, so there's some things you've done in the past that you're still communicating and taking those results and making sure that they're out and available for higher education folks to take a look at. And I know there's also some exciting new things in the works. So there's a fairly new emissions calculator. I know you're looking to get some additional feedback from higher education institutions. So, we've talked about some of the really cool things that are existing, but what about what's coming up?
Yeah, so the biggest thing by far in my mind is a new survey effort that we launched just this year, just a couple months ago. And that is one that was funded by the Department of Energy. And it's trying to create a new campus 1 to 100 Energy Star score.
Mhm.
So adding that sort of key metric for higher ed campuses where they could sort of see how they compare against peers and earn recognition from EPA for top performance. So that's the key thing. We're working right now with a small sort of group of industry representatives to try and develop survey questions. And then later this year and early next, we'll be finalizing the survey, doing survey testing, where we'll sort of solicit input on if the survey is meeting the mark, and then publishing the survey and promoting sort of people to respond to it so we can get data. We need a lot of data in order to develop a score, but that would hopefully come by the end of 2025 if the survey effort is successful. So like I said, that would mean there'd be a score in the tool for campuses, 1 to 100 score, and then there'd be sort of a path for recognition like Energy Star certification for efficiency. And then later this year, as a program, we're launching a new recognition for low carbon buildings, where in addition to energy efficiency, you have to sort of meet renewable energy and direct emissions requirements. So that's a new low carbon recognition that will be available in addition to efficiency focused recognition, basically starting next year.
Wow. Okay. So big changes and exciting things, especially to your point about the scoring, right? So that's sort of an easy at a glance metric that will become available then for higher education institutions for them to understand not only, tracking that individual building over time, but how are they comparing across campuses, across that vertical. So that's really exciting to hear. And you really touched well on kind of some of the benefits of engaging with the EPA, of utilizing Energy Star Portfolio Manager as a tool, which is, getting that score, understanding more about your building portfolio. But I know there's other benefits too, and other good things for campuses. The more that they engage with Energy Star and with the EPA, things like, it's important to students, right? That sustainability and making sure that you're a green organization is something, especially for younger generations, that's really important. So just doing that engagement is a community thing. And just as a last question for you, are there any other kind of benefits or just good things that come out of, engagement with EPA, submitting your building data, all of those good things that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think the score will be transformative if we're successful in sort of reaching, hopefully new institutions and more institutions with the value of benchmarking and tracking energy performance and improvement. But I think there's still plenty you can do now. Anyone can benchmark in Portfolio Manager
Mhm.
and sort of understand their current performance and compare to similar buildings, within their portfolio, track change over time for energy use and water use and emissions metrics. And that can really start pretty simply with, say, you can create a single property that represents your entire campus. So you don't have to sort of start sort of, you know, way down in the minutia of individual building data if you have that. But yeah, I think, you know, with the new score, if we're successful, that could create new opportunities for student engagement. Say if you want to have competitions from between one campus and the next, sort of like a sports rivalry or whatnot in
I
athletic
love that.
conferences.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of new stuff that could come from that. In addition, across our program, we're sort of it's a little bit on the back burner right now because we are really we're I didn't mention this, but we're doing the largest update to Portfolio Manager in over a decade,
Wow.
and so a
Okay.
lot of our attention is there. But in the future, we're also hoping to launch a new improvement focused recognition to try and get sort of more people engaged with our program, not just the top performers, but really try and encourage
Right.
improvement all the way
People who are
up to
making those
top performers.
strides. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. And that's exciting to hear about Portfolio Manager as well, that you're looking at making some changes there. It's already a really fantastic tool. Are you looking to make it to add features or kind of what are you changing and what are you excited about with the update?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Like I said, we haven't made a significant update since
In a
2013,
while.
so
Yep.
the landscape has changed a lot since then. So there's a lot that's sort of dovetails with building owner needs in connection with policy reporting, since that's been a big driver for our program. But there's also a lot that's just sort of making the user face simpler, adding more related to emissions tracking. So we just this past week, I believe we updated renewable tracking, especially for offsite renewables, to try
Okay.
and
Yeah,
add more
yeah.
features there. And then we're sort of expanding other emissions tracking functionality, including related to refrigerants. So, I mean, there's so many features, it's hard to list them. This is a big project with years and years of ideas behind it. But
But
um,
all good
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Nice. Awesome. That's excellent. And thank you so much. Thanks for sharing with us a little bit about what exists and where folks can dig in today and also what's coming up for you. It's deeply appreciated. And we're certainly very excited about all the changes that are happening. And it sounds like there's quite a lot of them. So thank you so much for joining us today to share some of what's going on and what's new at the EPA.
of course. Thank you for the time.
Yeah. Okay, so we are now that we've kind of learned a little about benchmarking, the standard tools of benchmarking, and some of the compliance issues with benchmarking. I'm really excited to introduce Melanie and Zach and talk a little bit about folks who are living and doing this right now, and get some perspective from them. So Melanie, why don't we start with you and can you tell me a little bit about yourself and about optimized systems and what you do?
Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah.
As noted, I'm Melanie Stewart. I was actually the sustainability manager for a higher education institution for more than a decade. So I understand where people are coming from, whether that's a feeling of shared pain or frustration, but also successes. And now I work for Optimized Systems, which is a kind of specialty engineering company that literally optimizes your systems. So without having to, I mean, a lot of energy savings and not that they're not valid can come from replacing equipment and going to more efficient equipment, but we'll actually dig in and make sure the equipment that you have is working correctly. And then optimized essentially your sequence of operations and different formats so that you can get the most out of the equipment that you have. And there's actually a lot of energy to be saved there. And that was one of the things that I ran into when I was a sustainability manager. It was super interesting to me. We also provide commissioning services and integration services. And a lot of times integration gets mentioned in the sense of kind of having a singular front end for your mechanical systems, which, leads to efficiencies and purchasing power on that side. But we're also getting into doing integrations with the HVAC system and lighting or mechanical shades, things like that, which then lead to further savings. So it's kind of fun to nerd out on exterior temperatures and, west facing windows and when those shades automatically close and how that can help the HVAC system and then lower energy use and emissions. So it's been fun.
And also making it easier, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah,
to your point, all of those tools take manual load off while saving you money, while helping with your GHG goals, all kinds of things that, roll up together into kind of one big package of benefits. So that's really cool.
absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
probably everybody knows that when you're, on a large campus, you have lots of things that are not really anybody's job. And so then they're nobody's job, that lots of people know that like, why are those shades open or why are the lights always on over here? But nobody closes them. So when you can make that automatic, it certainly helps.
And Zach, you're smiling at that comment a little bit. Tell us about you, tell us about your role at WMU and about your journey into campus sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me again. So my name is Zach Richardson. I'm actually originally from Indiana. I went to Purdue and then I went to IU, so both sides of the rivalry there. And then I've been in Michigan for a couple of years now. I immediately prior to this, I was in the Office of Climate and Energy with the state, working on developing, implementing the My Healthy Climate Plan to reach statewide carbon neutrality by 2050. And then I've been at Western for about a year now, coming up on a year in the role. And I do a lot of our work on kind of day-to-day energy management on campus. So assessing opportunities for energy conservation, implementing those projects when we can, coordinating with faculty and staff on other climate and energy initiatives. We're in the process of developing an update to our climate action plan that was first developed in 2012, and then working on improving our sort of scope and the quality of our metering and monitoring. So we really do have that kind of complete image of where energy is being used, how it's being used on campus.
Right. That's awesome. That's great to hear. And speaking about benchmarking tools and kind of what you use to get that overarching view of what's going on campus and where things are happening. Tell me about how you have used or have come across EPA and Energy Star data and are there other kind of tools that like Energy Cap that you maybe that you bring in and that you use and that have helped you on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do use both Energy Star Portfolio Manager and Energy
Awesome.
Cap. So we have some processes and software kind of on our end that uploads our interval data for hundreds, if not thousands, of meters across campus to Energy Cap twice a day. So we really have that kind of fine interval data, which is really useful for, like I said, kind of identifying you know where energy is being used, how it's being used, and then being able to aggregate that data and submit it automatically to portfolio manager is really valuable to get that kind of higher level picture of not necessarily 15 minutes, but building by building, which are energy efficient, which are maybe a little bit more energy hogs, and
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
helping to prioritize where we focus our efforts.
Right. Floats to the top those issues of, hey, what's some low-hanging fruit that possibly we can address. That's great. That's awesome. And Melanie, tell me about, I know that Optimize Systems has higher education clients that come to you. You yourself are obviously very well versed in this space. When you're talking about benchmarking and taking a look and a comparison of building to building, what kind of benchmarking are your customers and your clients looking to do? Are they doing it across their own portfolio? Are they tracking a single building over time? Are they looking to programs like Energy Star to understand kind of how they fit into a larger industry? Is your client base using and working with benchmarking?
Yes to all of that.
Okay, nice.
So, Zach said it well, you have to have some benchmarking to know what your, buildings are consuming. Are they an energy hog? Are they not? I mean, even buildings that have consistent use, you need something to compare them to know that this is a good amount of usage. Too much is a really efficient building, whatever that may be. And so having buildings benchmarked can really help tell you that. I think it's super helpful to have just, single building benchmarked against itself, because that's where you can see issues. And interval data or even monthly, meter data, billing data can help you find those immediate problems, the leaks, the big things that are happening. But having a building benchmarked can help you find those little things that happen over time. And that's quite common, that you don't have something that fully breaks. You just have a damper that doesn't close all the way, or, little things that happen. Something gets left in hand, and you're using a little bit of energy. And so when you have a building benchmarked, you can find those issues. And it's helpful, I think, because you know that those things can be fixed. You already know what that building is capable of. And so unless there's been a whole, wholesale change in the building, what it's being used for, where you can be and just need to work to get back there. So it's super helpful to do that. But I also liked, having been able to benchmark compared to other buildings, whether it's on your own campus or other campuses, because competition could be a very real thing. And everybody wins when you do that, when you're reducing energy and then emissions and cost. So.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, that's a really good point. And actually, Zach, that made me think of something that you and I had chatted about a little bit in a prior conversation, which was you made a really good point that a lot of campuses are designed, right, by nature for when they were at their maximum capacity for the most possible students, right, for the largest and biggest population that they can have. And one of the things that you have used benchmarking for or look to it for is to say, okay, as these things fluctuate, what are the buildings that we want to focus on? What are our superstars? How do we kind of adjust our building portfolio? And I would love for you to chat a little bit about that, because I think it's fascinating and a really good point.
Oh, thanks. And yeah, absolutely. So for Western in particular, our last campus master plan was developed in 2000, the early 2000s, and enrollment was higher then. So our campus is not, I would say, currently designed for the needs of a college campus. We know that over the past few years, higher education has changed a lot, both in terms of I think a lot of colleges are probably seeing enrollment numbers lower than they maybe have been historically
In the past. Yep.
And as well, how students learn has changed. And so, there are a couple elements to that of like, where we're able to concentrate activities on campus in our more energy efficient buildings so that we're not, running a huge energy hog building because there's one person in there, right?
Right.
But also we're going through the process of developing a new campus master plan, and benchmarking has been really useful in that sense of identifying, as we change the way our campus looks, probably bringing down some older buildings that are in not great condition, building new buildings, identifying which buildings are maybe candidates for being hibernated. And obviously, energy efficiency is not the only metric that goes into that,
Of course. Yeah.
but it's certainly a factor and valuable information to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have more questions for you about that new energy plan, which is exciting. Before I move off the topic of kind of the benchmarking tools, Melanie, I wanted to ask you, both in your prior life in higher ed and now obviously working with clients that do a lot of benchmarking and submittal of data. What has your experience been with the EPA Energy Star tool? What do you think of it, and how has it helped and played into benchmarking for you and your clients?
Yeah, we have lots of clients that use Energy Star Portfolio Manager that, as noted before, it's a free program. It's very functional. It's great to be able to compare yourself to institutions, across the country, and ones that you don't have to have, relationships with in order to find that data or dig for it, that, will do it for you there. I was super excited to hear Brendan's update that I knew about the HBI, study and the things that they were doing, but then to, have a big update, that'll be really exciting. So lots of people use it for voluntary programs, things like stars and getting recognition on campus. And so, having that data in there is helpful. And, then we are also seeing a lot of cities and places that are having mandates where they have to report through the portfolio manager portal, if you will. And so getting that data in there is helpful. So I also, like using Energy Cap for that. It's super easy to get in there and look at different information within your own campus and comparing that, and love that those two programs talk to each other so that you can upload your data into one and then immediately just push it to the other without any extra work. So it works out really slick.
That's awesome to hear, and I'm glad. And that's actually another area that I wanted to chat with you a little bit about. The EPA Energy Star is a great program for, to your point, getting that information. It's free, it's easy to use, all those good things. But sometimes you want to dig deeper, right, into the data, whether it's, your own a single building or a portfolio of buildings. So I'm glad to hear that Energy Cap helps to serve you when you're talking to the EPA, but either Energy Cap as a tool or other tools and processes that are helpful to you when you want to kind of go that extra step and start taking that data and analyzing it and really digging in and understanding, what tools do you look to do that?
We mostly use Energy Cap. It's super helpful to, like, say, everything
That's
is there. You
awesome.
can have interval data, you have billing information. It's by the meter, by the building. So you can look at it as granularly as you want to, or not. From a higher education perspective, as long as people are using something, paying attention, benchmarking it, whether it's through Portfolio Manager, you have something else. I mean, I know for a lot of years we had, these ginormous, magical spreadsheets that you tried to track things and create graphs and whatever. And it certainly isn't the most efficient, but at least, you have data, and that's the most important, is to, be able to have data and make informed decisions. Because I don't know any sustainability department or even facilities department that is overly flush with money. So getting money for programs, even when it's a project that you're going to save money on or have an ROI, it's still hard to get that initial funding to make it happen. So if you can make the most informed decision possible, that's a great way to start out.
That's a really good point too, that, even when it will be a savings, how do you package that? And, certainly things like M&V, IPMVP capabilities can help there, but it's a stumbling block. Which, Zach, made me think of a question that I wanted to ask you, which was, you have extensive experience with this, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of challenges within your campus, as you're setting up your sustainability program, as you're managing your energy use. What are some challenges that you have faced that maybe other higher education folks that are listening might be facing? And how did you solve those and move forward?
Yeah, I think I touched on one a little bit in the previous answer, with understanding how energy is affecting our campus and then making our plans in that context. I think another one Melanie just touched on, right? Budgets are not limitless, unfortunately. But so being able to right, provide that information about a project in context is very valuable. And that's one thing that we take advantage of with Portfolio Manager, is the ability to share data both in from Energy Cap going into Portfolio Manager, but we also here at Western have a green revolving fund, and we use the GRITS, the Green Revolving Investment Tracking System from SEI to manage that. And there's an integration between that platform and Portfolio Manager, which is really valuable to put that kind of the ROI, the payback data in the context of how efficient is this building relative to other ones on campus, and as well as, like you said, kind of digging into that data in a little bit more granularity for measurement and verification to demonstrate the value of energy conservation work, because it's not always the most visible, most interesting, right?
Sure.
A
Yeah.
massive solar array. I'm here for it. I love it. But also very important to just reduce the energy that we're using. And that's not always, very apparent to someone just walking by a building. So, being able to collect all that information, put it into a narrative that can really elevate, what we've been doing and what our successes have been. I think just kind of building that momentum around a culture of responsible energy use.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. And I was thinking too, not just communicating to stakeholders, but to students and prospective students. So, sustainability and green initiatives are important to them. And to your point, it might not be as clear as, oh, those are our wind turbines out yonder, that it's not always that obvious, but it doesn't mean that those initiatives are not ongoing every day. So, that's to your point, communicating to your student body and to prospective students as well, and have the tools to say, this is what's going on our campus, and this is the impact that it's having. So speaking of and talking about the new campus energy plan that we touched on a little bit, I know that you're already using Energy Star and EPA tools, for some current things. How do you see Energy Star and that data continuing to play a role, and even an even bigger role as you revamp your energy plan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting time for sure, and things are still, a little bit dynamic. So, like I said, we developed an initial climate action plan in 2012 and campus master plan in the early 2000s, and so both are kind of being redeveloped as we speak, right? And our original 2012 climate action plan had us committed to carbon neutrality by 2065. A recent update to our university strategic plan accelerated that commitment to carbon neutrality by 2050. 26 years is both a long time and very soon.
Yeah.
And so, we're still working with engineering consultants on exactly, how we're going to be supplying power to campus in a renewable way. But no matter what path we take, reducing energy consumption and improving efficiency is going to be a major part of that. And I only foresee, the importance of our monitoring and benchmarking increasing as time goes on. Kalamazoo does not have a policy or mandate at the moment, but
Right.
I wouldn't rule that out.
Right.
They have their own climate action plans and priorities, and so we want to be prepared for that eventuality.
Of course.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's been very valuable just in the process of working with consultants and engineers as they help us design, the future systems. They've been asking for the energy use intensity of our campus buildings, and so being able to have that information on hand to go, yep, it's right here, has been super valuable, I think, for all parties involved.
And Melanie, question for you. So Zach, you just kind of talked through, and I think all throughout, this conversation, we've touched on some of the good things about benchmarking, but if you could just kind of summarize, some of the positive impacts that building benchmarking has had for your higher education customers, and kind of like the top couple of things that, it's really helped with. I think that would be a great point to hit for higher ed folks that are listening.
Sure. We've found it to be helpful in a couple different places. It's as I kind of mentioned before, a lot of buildings kind of have that slide where you have things that don't necessarily, break where people notice. And those are great buildings to get back into and take care of those little issues. And then, it also helps you make those informed decisions on where to spend your money. And those are, most campuses have some kind of plan, where your low hanging fruit is, where you need to put LED lighting, things like that. And then what we found is a lot of customers, kind of get the more obvious low hanging fruit and then don't really know where to go. What do we do next? Whether it's a, green revolving fund or you just have goals to meet. I think Zach's point of, that the certain number of years is very long and very short is a spot on, for, I think most campus sustainability personnel feel that, stress related to that, it seems like a long time. And so people don't really have their foot on the gas but it's just not possible to hit those aggressive goals at the end. And so, knowing, where to head next and what kinds of things to do, benchmarking is a great way to identify what buildings are there. And even better when you have a plan that, this building is, going to be used differently or torn down or added on to, or things like that, where you can then use that to plan. It is an energy hog, but it's going to be torn down in 2 years. So leave it alone, but this building's going to get an addition. And at that time we should upgrade, optimize,
right.
Do whatever. And
Re-insulate.
so
Yep.
exactly. And it's a lot easier to get some of those things into projects when there's an additional project going on. But I know I've had a lot of colleagues that, have that frustration of somebody spends money, redoing part of a building or doing something, and then it comes down. It's like, why do we spend money on this? So
Right.
Benchmarking can really help pull all of that together and know what the, right thing to do is. And it'll help you find, some of those moderate issues too, that maybe aren't a full-blown leak, but also, something that's just creeping up or whatever. So a great tool to use across the board.
Speaking of things that are up and coming and changing, what's new at Optimized Systems, or what are you excited about right now in the sustainability space?
From a sustainability perspective, I'm just super excited how many people are working on this. Several years ago, it was one of those things that a lot of campuses and businesses, made sustainability statements and made goals. And, they had a goal for 2030 or 2040 and there wasn't a lot of movement. In a lot of cases, the people who were in charge knew that they were going to be long gone before those goals came due. So they kind of took the PR moment and then, left somebody else holding the responsibility list. And so I'm just really excited now how much movement people are seeing, how much stuff is happening, and how much potential there is in existing campus buildings that I'm all for, solar panels and, other forms of fossil-free energy, but those are expenses too. And a lot of them are technology that then has to be upgraded later. And so if you can make your existing building and your existing systems as efficient as possible, you can
work for you
on those on your goals and reducing your energy using and emissions. So I see that a lot, and there's so much technology out there, and I think that's what we're getting into at Optimized Systems, that as we we talked about the shades and whatever, and it kind of reminded me when Zach was talking that how you can use room scheduling software, that there are some buildings that they're like, oh yeah, those classrooms get used all the time, or you have a really big auditorium that's being used and conditioned all day long, but there's really only a couple classes that need that full auditorium, whether you're being more efficient getting the smaller class in a right-sized classroom, or you're only conditioning that huge space when it's going to be used. Either way, but we've used or helped a lot of higher education institutions to discover that some of their classroom or other scheduled spaces, conference rooms or whatever, that people are like, yeah, it's really busy. it's really not when you look at it from a perspective of in a 24-hour day, it's only used for 3 hours, and how much energy you can save by scheduling your heating and cooling to only be in those hours instead of the rest of the day. So lots of new possibilities with technology, which is really exciting.
Right. And new technology with your existing systems, your
Absolutely.
existing infrastructure, your existing buildings that you can optimize to meet the goals that you have. And to your point that started really big and sort of nebulous and exciting. And yeah, someone else eventually, sure. And, yeah, you can now move into, hey, this is actually how we're going to meet these goals and achieve these. And yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a really key piece and a really exciting piece of,
great.
you can do it with partners like Optimized Systems and the EPA and Energy Cap and other things, and work with what you've got. And Zach, I know we talked about the new energy plan. Is there anything else in general that you're excited about as an energy leader in higher ed? Whether it's engagement with young people and students or your colleagues, what are you excited about in this space?
Yeah, I'm just excited in general. I think it feels like a really active time to be doing this
Mhm.
work, and it feels like important work to be doing right now. I think there's a lot of attention on sustainability, greenhouse gas emissions,
Mhm.
and like you said, it can sometimes be nebulous. You make a statement, and people think, "Oh, 2050, that's 26 years." But I think being able to take those high level commitments and start to narrow down, prioritize, and chart a path towards implementing them, and then actually being able to um, take a look at a project and say, okay, we reduced this many kilowatt hours. That means that we avoided this number of emissions, and putting a
Mhm.
number to that feels very gratifying.
Yeah.
And you know, I alluded to before, kind of building that culture and elevating sort of the visibility of energy conservation on campus. That's something that I'm excited about too. I'm seeing, from the student body, from faculty, a lot of excitement.
Nice.
They'll say things to me like, "Wow, I didn't know that we were doing that. That's really cool," and that's very gratifying to hear. And so that's something that I'm just excited about, kind of moving these plans forward, turning them into tangible projects, and yeah,
And that you get to be the one to share them and,
yeah.
and evangelize that to people who genuinely care and are excited for it. That's awesome. One last question for you, and then I have a wrap-up question for both of you, and that would be, what tools or resources would you recommend to a campus right now who's looking to maximize their energy savings?
I yeah, so I certainly Energy Star Portfolio Manager,
Yep,
and Energy Cap. I use it every day, super valuable. Honestly, not sure how I would do this job without it. So those are the two that I lean on the most, and would recommend others look into.
that's awesome, and that's wonderful. As Energy Cap, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you. And Melanie, I was going to end with one question that I'd like you both to answer. Melanie, maybe you can start. And just what general advice would you give to a campus who is looking to meet those maybe aggressive, nebulous sustainability goals? Where would you recommend that they start, and what would you tell them to help them along?
I mean, the most basic advice is do something, just get
Yeah,
started, bite a piece off and get going. But from a more organized standpoint, I guess maybe is the right word. Find a way to make the best decisions possible. Money is tight and whatever. So use Energy Star Portfolio Manager, use Energy Cap. I agree with Zach. I'm in there, both of those programs every day, looking at data, and get in there and figure out what you need to do and where you can get some wins. I think that, you have a project that can save you some energy and emissions, and you can, just snowball that if you market your success. This is something that's really important. especially to the student body. And so, you can push that to your student body and have that momentum roll with that. And then hopefully, whether you have a green revolving fund or, just somebody in facilities that you can say, look, we reduced our energy cost by this much, let us parlay that into the next project and kind of keep going from there. It a little more, easier said than done, but still, a possibility that is, as you can get some wins under your belt and then keep building off of them.
Great advice. And Zach, same question for you. So a campus that maybe isn't as far along as you are, or is looking at this a little earlier in the road, what advice would you give and what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Melanie said. I thought that was a great answer. To add on to that, though, I think one thing that I find really important, really valuable is not doing this work in a silo, right? Building a team, or even just making connections with other folks throughout the university. So being able to talk with staff, faculty, students about what's going on, what maybe needs that they see on campus. At least once I've had someone tell me, "Oh yeah, my colleague they just put a piece of paper over their vent." Because it gets too cold otherwise.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. It's like those are things like I wouldn't have known that unless someone had told me. And so I think that, even if it's not like a designated like steering committee or anything like that,
Right.
being able to
All of the
make those
formalities. Yeah.
being able to make those connections to the different sort of vertical parts of campus and make that team is really valuable, because there are always going to be things that you don't know, you aren't able to catch. It's just more eyes on a problem is always helpful.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you both so much for having this conversation with me today. I have loved both our prior conversations and this one. I thank you both for bringing your experience to this discussion, and I hope it's helpful for other campuses and higher ed institutions and energy folks out there who are grappling with some of these questions. I'm going to wrap us up here. Again, I'm Sarah Uranowski from Energy Cap. The role that Energy Cap plays in all of this, and thank you both for explaining that you do use us as a tool. We are the #1 trusted energy and sustainability ERP, and we've been handling energy and utility data for more than 40 years. We have 10,000 users and process approximately 20 billion in bills annually, with a verified savings for our customers of more than 500 million. And we do that across our product suite, which is greenhouse gas, financial grade reporting, portfolio level energy and sustainability reporting, and of course, real-time data analysis for immediate action across our product suite. So just wanted to let everyone know that when Zach and Melanie and I are talking about Energy Cap, that's what we're talking about. Utility management, Carbon Hub, and smart analytics. And thank you both, and thank you to Brendan as well earlier in this presentation for chatting with us about all things benchmarking and higher education. Along with this, I will include Melanie, certainly for Optimized Systems. I will include information to contact you, to contact Energy Cap, and as always, you can reach out to Energy Cap with additional questions at any time. And we're always happy to reach out to our speakers as well to engage in those answers. So thank you both so much for joining us today, and we'll talk to you soon.